Most people spend their lives either believing in God or rejecting the idea altogether, without ever asking the only question that actually matters. What is God really? Not what religion says, not what science denies, not what ancient scriptures attempt to describe in metaphors, stories, or rituals. But what is this presence, this source, this intelligence that gave rise to everything, including the very mind that wonders about it? Because if we're honest, no one taught you the truth. Not your Sunday school, not your university, not even your favorite spiritual teacher. Everyone just handed you their best guess, wrapped in tradition, fear, or philosophy. But guess what? God is not a guess. God is not what people believe. And most importantly, God is not what you think. Subscribe to the True God channel. Because here, we don't speak from belief. We speak from knowing. We don't represent religion. We reveal what religion tried to describe, but never quite reached. This is not imagination. It's not metaphor. It's not blind faith. It's reality. Undeniable. Direct. Present. The myth of God. Let's start with the most important truth you'll ever hear. God is not a person. Not a man in the sky. Not an external being watching you from some invisible throne. Not an old patriarch with emotions, preferences, and a chosen religion. That image of God, a reactive, judgmental, tribal deity, is a psychological projection. It's what early civilizations imagined when they looked at the sky and didn't understand the forces that shaped their lives. They were trying to make sense of the unknown, so they made the infinite look a lot like themselves. We created God in our image, and then forgot we were the ones doing it. But the real God, the one that actually is, isn't like that at all. God doesn't have human moods. God doesn't choose sides in wars or get offended by what you eat, wear, or say. The real God is not an entity you can describe. It's not a figure to be pleased. And it definitely isn't a character trapped in a book. Religion tried to claim ownership of God by creating systems, doctrines, and rules. It tried to make the infinite manageable. But you can't contain the boundless in a book. You can't capture the eternal in a story. And science, in its attempt to be purely rational, dismissed God altogether. It doesn't mean to be hostile. It's just not equipped to study the formless. Science is limited to what it can measure, test, and observe. But God is not something you see. It's the very awareness by which you're seeing. It's not a force within the universe. It's the source behind the universe. Religion made God too small. Science ignored God completely. But in both cases, the same mistake is made. They're looking out there when the truth is already right here. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. The reason God is not what you think is because God exists before thought. God is what allows thought to even arise. God is the silent intelligence that gives rise to the entire field of consciousness itself. You can't think your way to God because thought is always limited. It operates in opposites, this or that, right or wrong, subject or object. But God is not an object. God has no opposite. As long as you're thinking about God, you're still outside the truth. But when thinking becomes still, when the noise inside you quiets down, God doesn't appear. God is simply recognized. Not as a vision, not as a voice, but as the stillness behind all movement, the clarity behind all confusion, the awareness behind every experience you've ever had. This is the truth most people never hear, but some spend their entire lives intuitively searching for. God is not somewhere else. God is not someone else. The presence you feel in your deepest silence, the intelligence that breathes you, moves your blood, digests your food without your permission or effort. That's not just biology. That's not just chemistry. That's God. The same presence that holds the planets in orbit, that moves the tides, that births galaxies and dissolves them into black holes, is the exact same presence that's looking out through your eyes right now. But here's the key. It's not your identity, not your story, not your personality or your ego. It's deeper than all of that. It's the awareness that never changes, even as everything else does. And maybe you're thinking, if that's true, why don't I feel it? Why don't I see it? Because you were taught to look for God like you'd look for an object in a room. You were taught that God was out there, separate, distant, hidden. But God is not something you find like a lost key. God is something you stop ignoring. You've been so distracted by thoughts, opinions, anxieties, and beliefs that you haven't noticed what's been holding you the entire time. God is not hiding. God is what's real. What's always been real. And when you finally realize that everything you've ever called you has been sitting inside that infinite presence, not outside it. Then you stop searching, not because you gave up, but because you finally arrived. So, let's be clear. God is not what you think, because God is not a thought, not a story, not a belief system or a being with preferences. God is the unchanging reality beneath all experience. The silent presence that was here before your name, before your culture, before your first breath. And it will remain long after your body returns to dust. And when you stop trying to understand God through ideas, and instead begin to recognize the sacred within this very moment, then you no longer need anyone to tell you what God is. Because you'll know, and no one can take that knowing from you. Subscribe to the True God channel. This isn't religion. This isn't opinion. This is what's real. And it's been patiently waiting for you to notice. Here, we reveal the God who exists with or without belief. The God who cannot be captured in words, but who can be known in stillness. This is your invitation to remember what you already are. Welcome to the truth.